Every so often, a story erupts in the gacha gaming world that perfectly captures the fragile balance between creator, communities, and the narratives they both hold dear. The Jenazad situation is one of those stories. What began as a single review score turned into a multi layered controversy that spiraled far beyond its original spark, pulling in streamers, rival creators, and even the Chinese community on Bilibili. Yo! Welcome back to the channel. Kamusta po sa inyong lahat? To be honest, I hesitated to even comment on this because I don't want to sound biased. And I recognize that Jenezad did attempt to apologize to the entire community. However, it was frustrating to see him use his spending habits in the game as a way to validate his opinions. Almost as if those of us who spend less somehow matter less. I fully support the right to hold an opinion, whether it aligns with the popular view or goes against it, but it's the delivery that matters. In this case, his tone came across as dismissive, even mocking, and the overall approach felt disingenuous. To understand why this snowball rolled downhill so fast, you have to start with the atmosphere before the 2.5 update of Wuthering Waves. The community had spent weeks on edge over whether the villain, Prolova, would get the dreaded soft redemption arc, the kind of character rebranding so common in gacha narratives that it deflates all dramatic tension. Kuro Games resisted that temptation. Prolova stayed a complex, uncompromising antagonist, and the community celebrated like it was a personal victory. The praise was nearly unanimous, with rival game loyalists begrudgingly admitting Kuro nailed it. And you know who else deserves praise? LD Shop. LD Shop has you covered with savings up to 27% off your initial top-up purchase. LD Shop is powered by the trusted LD Emulator Group and partnered with Razer Gold, delivering a service that's both lightning fast and rock-solid secure. Every top-up is processed in 30 minutes or less, so you can get back to pulling without missing a beat. And it's not just for Wuthering Waves. LD Shop supports all major gacha titles from Genshin Impact, Zenless Zone Zero, Honkai Star Rail, to Etheria Restart, just to name a few. With frequent coupons and generous discounts, they take a real swing at easing the financial sting of new patches. Hit the link in my description to top up through LD Shop and score an extra 15% off your purchase. LD Shop, your go-to top-up shop. Now back to the video. I personally glossed over this in my own review, and honestly, can you blame me? It's just a rare moment when a game refuses to cave in to the well-worn gacha playbook. Kuro clearly wasn't chasing appeasement or cheap sympathy points. They were laser focused on telling the story they wanted to tell, and that conviction paid off in spades. This was peak cinema in a sea of recycled tropes. To appreciate just how bold this was, remember the pre-2.5 tension? Marco Meatball was publicly threatening to quit WuWa if Prolova followed the tired path of becoming yet another villain turned best friend, complete with a tragic childhood flashback and a redemption arc shoehorned in by Act 3. Instead, WuWa delivered a villain who remained true to her core, giving players a story that felt sharper, darker, and more in line with the ominous tone Kuro had promised since day one. Then came Jenazad's review. Streaming his playthrough, he gave the story a 7 out of 10. Already an outlier in a sea of 9s and 10s here, folks. But the real sticking point wasn't the number. Viewers argued he barely paid attention, talking over cutscenes, joking with the chat, and missing context. To them, complaining about confusion while not actually watching was like skimming a mystery novel and calling the ending nonsense. The pushback was direct but contained until Jenezad responded. In a live stream meltdown, he lashed out, calling parts of the Wuthering Waves community too stupid to God, too stupid, too stupid. I'll keep it there. Too stupid. And brushing off criticism as worthless. He leaned on the fact that he'd spend more money and attended Kuro Fest, framing himself as more invested than his critics. It wasn't just a defense, it was an insult, escalating the issue from a review critique to a community-wide slap in the face. And once he reframed criticism as harassment, the story left the bounds of nuance entirely. And this is where bigger drama content creators like Tectone and Saint Thomas entered, reshaping the narrative into a simpler and far more clickable version. Wuthering Waves fans were harassing someone over a 7 out of 10 review. It was clean, digestible, and wrong. The truth, supported by the community's history, is that they don't reject criticism, they reject what they see as low effort, bad faith, or inconsistent criticism. It's worth pausing to ask, why would someone like Jenazad rate this story the way he did? Surely he's not oblivious to the fact that it broke away from the tired friendship saves the day formula. If anything, one would expect him to be just as weary as the rest of us of the cliche, where sworn enemies become allies after a couple of heartfelt speeches. So, was it a matter of missing the bigger picture, or failing to grasp the long-term significance of what he had just experienced? As an older member of this community, and yes, when Glavikio joked about grown men crying over this storyline, I am proudly one of them. I can say this hit differently. I love the story. For the first time, we witness a character the Rover couldn't save because of his own pride. Someone who used him purely for their own agenda, and someone who held firm to their convictions rather than bending to the Rover's will to rewrite the future for a convenient outcome. That kind of narrative courage is rare, and I was genuinely impressed that the devs took this path despite knowing it could impact sales, especially in an industry where studios often sanitize characters to make them more marketable for banners. But not Kuro. They stayed true to the tone they promised. Unfortunately, Jenezad seemed too caught up in his own dismissive stance to recognize the weight of this paradigm shift. And as the CN community picked up this story, the core message rang loud and clear. The score itself was never the real issue. What stung was the open mockery of the community. Many argued that Jenezad had every opportunity to revisit the story with sincerity, to rewatch the cutscenes he had skimmed and provide a thoughtful second look. Instead, he chose to double down, treating criticism as a personal attack rather than a chance to clarify his stance. The potential for resolution slipped away, and what could have been a constructive dialogue devolved into sprawling debates about gacha tribalism, turning a specific incident into a vague cultural talking point. In that fog of overgeneralization, the original grievances, centered on fairness, attentiveness, and basic respect, were drowned out entirely. The result became a textbook case in how online controversies evolved beyond their origins. The initial spark was about review diligence. The accelerant was an emotionally charged on-stream rant that painted an entire fanbase with a single insult, turning one against the other and one becoming a victim over a larger group. Really sad stuff there, folks. And that blaze spread rapidly because drama content thrives on turning messy realities into neat, clickable narratives. And when the embers cooled, the core issue remained untouched, buried under a mountain of side arguments. Really sad. This was never about muscling criticism. It was about the expectation that if you're going to critique something people are deeply invested in, you approach it with seriousness and integrity. Cross that line into belittlement, and what could have been a spirited debate transforms into an all-out war. This is why sometimes it's better to pause, think it over, and if you don't have anything better or well thought of enough to say, to just keep quiet. Shut it. Say nothing at all. Just collect your thoughts create a different video for it, and then publish a more well thought of review or critique. So, if this video resonated with you, please support it with a like. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is probably the best time to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thank you so much for watching. Maraming salamat po. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.